Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Well, welcome to the first Barnyard Language episode for 2026. We are recording, well, it's still 2025, but by the time you hear this, it's going to be New Year's Day. So welcome to the new year and welcome back to the podcast. So, Katie, what is the Christmas report on the farm? How is everybody? Was there giftage? Did Santa arrive? What's going on in Iowa?
That feels like it should have some 60 minutes-esque intro music, doot. Santa came, gifts were given, everybody got a lot of books, which is nice. Some toys, not as many as there have been other years, which is also nice.
Yeah. As the kids get older, the toys get sometimes more expensive, but also not quite as big either, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to get them fewer, nicer toys than to get them more in quantity and less in quality.
Right, yeah, and more about how many things can I find to keep them busy that might entertain them for 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah, and also more of the toys they got were physically larger, which makes them much easier to find than when it's little bitty dooders. Other than that, not a lot. We're having a blizzard today. I think you guys have a huge ice storm coming in, is that right?
Yes, yeah, we have an ice storm came through last night, so I don't have a very long commute to the barn, but it was treacherous for sure. I wasn't actually sure how it was going to get down there. It was just like a sheet of glass in parts and then rough glass in other parts, where there were tracks or footprints.
I find too that at least if your chore boots are like mine, they don't have great traction on ice.
Yeah, mine are. I have multiple pairs of footwear. I've got the one pair that I wear from the house to the barn, so they don't get a ton of use, but I try and keep those ones cleaner so that the dirtiest boots aren't in the barn. Plus, our barn is warm enough that what I actually wear when I'm doing chores is not the same footwear, so they're not the worst, but I don't think they're, other than having literal spikes on the bottoms of your feet, I don't think there was much that could have helped me this morning.
I do often keep a pair of yak tracks on the bottoms of my boots, which are, they're coils of wire. They are tremendous. Although a few years ago I made the mistake, somehow managed to drive to town with the yak tracks still on my boots without noticing it, and then stepped foot on the polished hard tile floor of our local Walmart and promptly sat down on the floor to take the yak tracks off, because the one thing worse than no yak tracks on ice is yes yak tracks on polished tile.
Right, yeah, they don't have any traction there.
Real slippery. But I wanted to remind folks, I Googled, and it is all over North America. You can dial 511 or check basically any name of a state or province plus 511 or some variation thereof for local current road conditions and such before you head out. And a lot of states in the U.S. at least have apps. I assume Canada does as well.
Yeah, and there seems to be a way more of those, like traffic cams and things like that give you kind of those real-time updates. Probably not my road. But our real-time update is when the hired man gets here in the morning. He tells us how bad the road is. And this morning it was bad, but he got here.
It's always interesting, when you see neighbors going by, to be able to judge kind of how bad the road is by how old the people driving past are. When it's the 19-year-old neighbor kid, it's a little less reassuring than when it's grown adults.
Yeah, but if the 19-year-old neighbor is going real slow, then that's also an indication.
Yeah, that's true. Other than that, not really any farm news. We sold some sheep last week, so that was good. One of Jim's old coworkers bought some. He and his family are starting a little flock. It was his wife's Christmas present, so hopefully she's enjoying them. And it was what she wanted. That is what she asked for. It was not a unrequested livestock gifting situation.
Yeah, that's not a great option. You usually want to make sure the person is mostly at least 95% in terms of wanting the livestock before gifting the livestock.
Yep, and they brought their two little boys with them who were 4 and 5, so they played in the lime pile in front of the barn with our kids, and everyone was so muddy that their boys got stripped out of their snow pants, their coats, and their boots before they were allowed back in the pickup because they were real dirty.
Signs of a good time.
Thankfully, they're the same kind of parents that we are and said, it'll wash. It's just mud. It's not worth worrying about. How was Christmas at your place, Arlene?
Well, we dubbed it Plaguemas because now, granted, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. With a family of six, when the first person goes down, usually the mental math is how long and will we be both sick and isolating and waiting for the next person to fall victim to the plague. So definitely wasn't as bad as it could have been. So the last day of school was the Friday before Christmas, and we had my now 11-year-old's birthday party on the last day of school, so that evening, because I'm a sucker for punishment. So was supposed to be just 4 kids over that night, and that got cut in half because 2 parents let me know that their kids were sick. So I mean, I knew it was coming because his class was obviously everyone was coming down with it. So by the next morning, he was feeling a little bit off. The rest of the family all went and got their flu shots. I don't know if it helped or not. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But then by Sunday morning, he was really sick, fever, headache. He fainted for the first time. It was all the things were happening. And so then from, like that day forward, it was just like kind of the waiting game. He recovered ish the next day or two. Then my husband got sick on Christmas Eve. So it was actually just the two of them, but it's sometimes just the anticipation of waiting for it to happen, and also knowing that it doesn't matter if you're sick, all the other chores still need to get done, and we could just cut out all the fun stuff. So yeah, normally we'd go to church on Christmas Eve, so we didn't go there. We were supposed to just have kind of a quiet Christmas day, but my mom was going to come have brunch with us, so we canceled on her, and we didn't go to dinner at my in-laws. It was just going to be us and my husband's one sister. So it wasn't huge family gatherings. Those weren't scheduled until this week. So all in all, it really worked out because our bigger family gatherings haven't happened yet, and those two didn't share their germs. So it was a quiet Christmas, but it was actually Christmas Day. No one was really sick, and we got chores done and had time for a nap, and it was just kind of cozy at home. Nothing went wrong in the barn, so that's always a bonus too. So yeah, it was not ideal, but it was, it had its moments. There were glimmers of good in amongst the illnesses. And we still have some Christmassy stuff to look forward to this week because that's when the rest of the family is actually going to be traveling and is going to be in our neighborhood. So it's nice that we didn't miss out on things that, you know, on the people that we don't get to see nearly as often.
Yeah, I do feel like since the pandemic, especially, people are more understanding of canceling things a little more proactively than we might have before, which is nice. I stayed home Christmas Day because I was sick, and Jim and the kids went over to his folks' house. It's just easier to not, especially when we're the sandwich generation with little kids and older folks, and it's just easier to not spread the germs.
Yeah, that's right. So farm wise, we have, I think, 15 to calve in the next week or so, and not many empty stalls either in the milking barn or in the calf barn. So I'm not sure where everyone is going to end up, but somehow it'll work its way out. We're prepping for our annual barn party, so there's a lot of cleaning and tidying going on this week in the barn, and so the house just continues to get ignored, but the barn will look great. But that's the bonus of having a party in a barn, is that it doesn't matter what my house looks like.
What's the I know when I reported back to my family that your family was sick, Jim was real concerned about Hugh's anticipated Christmas sinking situation.
Oh yes, yeah. So the herd health before Christmas, the vet even said, so if you sink these cows, you're going to have to breed them all on Christmas Day. And my husband said, oh, we don't have really many plans. It's fine. I can breed eight cows on Christmas Day. So he did. He didn't milk that morning. My daughter milked with me because he wasn't sure he could handle the up and down of milking in a tie stall. But by that day, he was well enough to actually breed all those cows. But that was about the limit to the amount of chores that he could do. The day before, they wouldn't have gotten bred. Or we would have had to call someone to come do it for him.
I hadn't considered that if you're dizzy and wobbly, a tie stall is extra unpleasant rather than like a parlor or something.
Yeah, they're just standing in front of you.
Yeah, that does seem deeply unpleasant. But I'm glad he got them all bred.
Yeah, they all got bred, so we'll find out soon if he was successful or not at that endeavor. But at least the process of getting them all ready to go, it wasn't wasted because he couldn't make that happen. Well, why don't we go ahead and introduce our first guest of the year?
All right, sounds good.
Our goal as podcasters is to create a program that makes you feel less alone as a farming, ranching, or homesteading parent, but we can't do it alone.
Supporting Barnyard Language on Patreon helps us cover production costs and ensures the future of the show, but you'll also gain access to exclusive perks and behind-the-scenes content.
Your support enables us to continue bringing you the thought-provoking conversations and inspiring stories week after week. So if you find value in what we're doing and want to be part of the Barnyard community, head over to patreon.com/barnyardlanguage and choose a tier that suits you. Today, we are happy to be talking to Jeannette Beringer, who's joining us from North Carolina. So, Jeannette, we start each of our interviews with the same question, and this is your intro to our listeners. So we always ask, what are you growing? So usually our farmers are telling us about their crops and livestock, but people also tell us about their kids and businesses and organizations that they're part of. So we will ask you that question. Jeannette, what are you growing?
Well, at home, I'm growing chickens, and I specialize in a particular breed called the Crèvecoeur or Crèvecoeur, and it's a French meat chicken. And 10 years ago, we got started with them because they were critically endangered and just about to go extinct in the United States. And I'm happy to say that they're doing quite well now. And I think mission accomplished, that the breed's doing well. And at work, I am helping to grow the Livestock Conservancy. And I've been with them 20 years now. And I've seen the organization do some amazing things to help conserve endangered breeds of livestock and poultry. And it's what I live and breathe, basically.
Well, evidenced by the fact that you were trying to save a breed of chickens starting in your own backyard. So how many, we talk often on here about chicken math. How many did you start off with and how many do you have now?
I started off with I had a mixed flock. I had to go all the way to St. Louis to find some. And I started with maybe 10 or 12. And then we grew it to a flock of about 50. And every year we would hatch out 100 to 200 for ourselves. But I also spent a lot of time getting eggs out there to other people. And one of the great breakthroughs we had in recovering the breed was being able to bring in some French genetics. And I worked with Greenfire Farm down in Florida, and they brought in several lines from France. And I happen to be married to a Frenchman, and I go to France to see family and have created connections with producers over there. So I was able to point them in the direction where to get chickens. And now the flock, we're probably down to about 30. We're kind of winding down now that the project is where I want it to be. And I'm still very much involved with poultry through the Livestock Conservancy, but we're winding things down here on our farm because my daughter doesn't live here anymore. She's out doing the adulting thing. And so we don't need to produce a couple hundred birds a year to fill the freezer.
So, Jeanette, when you talk about increasing genetics or, sharing genetics, a lot of times we're talking about semen for AI, which is relatively easy to move. Am I correct in thinking that with poultry, you were talking about either eggs or live animals? I mean, I've had chickens my whole life. I've never heard of AIing a chicken.
It's actually done a lot because some commercial strains are so heavy they're not capable of being able to successfully fertilize the female. And I've actually seen it done. I was up at Virginia Tech and got taught how to AI chickens. It's pretty easy, actually, once you get the rooster trained.
But the chickens that you were importing were live imports for your breed.
They were hatching eggs.
So it wasn't a chicken in a cat cage on an airplane or anything fun like that.
That would cost a lot of money, and hatching eggs just is a lot more practical.
Sure, yeah, yeah, and biosecurity wise, I'm sure that eggs are easier to get through all the intricacies of moving animals across borders too. So if someone hasn't seen your particular chickens, how would you describe the breed that you are passionate about?
Well, it's typically French, of course. They're really fancy, and I just keep the black color variety. There are other color varieties, but they've got a top knot, so it's this crazy hairdo, and then they've got beards. And the thing I love about the black chickens is they've got that beetle green sheen to them. So when the light hits them, they just sparkle like emeralds, and they're quite lovely. And they have a V comb, which kind of looks like devil horns almost. But I find the V combs really practical for, in particular, the colder months. I don't have to worry about frostbite or anything like that. They're lovely birds, and they're not the sharpest tools in the shed, I will say. I've kept on other chickens, and I will say the crabs are probably the dumbest birds I've ever kept. That, and their line of sight isn't very good, so every predator under the sun can get them. And so I have basically a chicken Fort Knox that they live in, and I have to cover it because we've got aerial predators and ground predators, and so I've got it covered, plus I got a hot wire all the way around, and that seems to keep everything out.
So we've actually gotten surprisingly far into talking to you without talking about why you're here today. And if you could tell us a little about who you work for.
Yeah, well, I work for the Livestock Conservancy, and we're a nonprofit that focuses on conservation of endangered breeds of livestock and poultry. And it's a very focused program in that the breeds we work with are genetically unique. And if they were to go away tomorrow, there's no way to recreate that animal genetically. You could recreate animals that look like them, but some of these breeds we work with have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and the foundation from which they were created no longer exists. And to give you an example, what I'm talking about is if quarter horses went away tomorrow, we could recreate quarter horses because we have colonial Spanish horses and we have Suffolk punch horses around, and you could get back to what a quarter horse is. But if Suffolk punch was to disappear tomorrow, that's it. There's no recreating it. You just can't, because the foundation that was used to create that hundreds of years ago no longer exists. And it all boils down to genetic diversity within agriculture and into today's modern farming systems. Very few breeds are used to produce a majority of the food that we eat. And if you're breeding the best to the best to the best to the best, and then you get this really tightly inbred population, when a problem occurs, and they do occur, you need genetics to go back to fix that. So like Holstein cattle, they're a big problem. They've got a tiny genetic foundation. Almost every Holstein in the country is related to only 3 bulls. And there have been genetic problems that have creeped up, and relatively quickly too. And there was one instance where there's this condition called bovine leukocyte adhesion syndrome. Say that 5 times fast. And it caused the calves to waste away and die at a young age. And tens of thousands of cows were affected with this problem. And it turns out when they looked at the pedigrees, every single one of them was related to one bull. And so problems do creep up, and the breeds that we conserve are the genetic reservoirs that we need in case something happens. So we're a nonprofit and a membership organization. So we have loads of members from every state and even abroad in Canada and Europe. And we are coming up on our 50th anniversary in a couple of years. And we're always proud to say that under our watch, we haven't lost a single breed. So we're pretty proud of that.
I would think that the Irish potato famine alone should be a good enough example of why we don't go with one genetic type and call it good. And I'm glad to hear someone call Holsteins a problem Arlene. My family raises beef cattle, and Arlene and her family dairy. So we have a relatively good natured.
Yeah, there's just this foot problems, this birthing problems, and they just don't live very long. Whereas take something like a Dutch belted cow, she can be productive up until she's like 12, 13, 14 years old. And so, where it really pays off with these heritage breeds, even though a Dutch belt might not produce as much milk as a Holstein, over the lifetime of that cow, she's giving you more calves and is productive longer than your average Holstein. So, it's the long term where these animals really excel.
So, what is your ag background then?
Actually, it's a zoological background I come from. In my previous life, before the Conservancy, I was a professional zookeeper up in Rhode Island, and I became a head zookeeper there. And one of the areas that I was in charge of was the Heritage Breeds Farm. And that's where I started learning about, the Livestock Conservancy and the issues around diversity of farm animals. For many years, I was a lemur specialist. And then towards the end of my career, I really found myself drawn to the farmyard because the farm animals were almost more misunderstood than some of the exotics out there. And the other thing that drew me to it was people's connection to them. Kids would come running into the farmyard, oh my God, it's a bunny rabbit, or they'll take a look at the cows, and just because they have horns, they think they're bulls, and the whole I'm wearing red, I better get out of here. And just trying to connect with the kids and give them the basics on the farm animals and their purpose, and that just because a cow has horns, it's not a bull, and here's a difference between a sheep and a goat. And I really enjoyed that. And then when I retired from the zoo, I ended up getting recruited by the Livestock Conservancy. They knew me through some work I had done, and they said, you ever consider working for us? And at the time, we had just gotten off a terrible winter up in New England where it was like blizzard after blizzard after blizzard. And moving to North Carolina actually sounded like a pretty good idea. Not to mention, I'd be doing something that I really enjoyed. And I've loved it. I've been with the Conservancy now for 20 years. And I think I'm leaving the world in a better shape than when I found it through this work, and love the people. The great thing about livestock and poultry is there's no politics involved. When you start talking with people about their animals, we're all talking a common language, and you can see when people are really passionate about the animals that they work with. And to be able to help those people is really satisfying. And the Conservancy does all kinds of work, from DNA testing to censusing to helping farmers with marketing and connecting with consumers. I do a lot of stuff with food. I'm a big foodie, and for a lot of our breeds, you got to eat them to save them. And I like to connect with chefs and have them try different products, and also educate farmers on conveying the proper messaging so that when people buy their products, they know how to prepare it so that it's a pleasant experience for them. And we do a lot of technical writing. And one of the programs I'm really proud of is called Shave 'em to Save 'em. And where a lot of farmers fall short is that they're not very good at marketing. They focus in on the animals and the production, but don't do a lot with marketing. And what we've done is created this program that does it all for them. And so we connect fiber artists with rare breed fiber producers. And the fiber artists sign up and they get a little passport book, and every page has a different breed on it. And they're required to purchase a minimum of 4 ounces of wool, because some people might not have enough money to pay for a whole fleece or not even know what to do with the whole fleece. So when they buy the wool, they'll get a sticker for their passport book. And then once they've done like 10 or 20 projects, they can send photos in of what they've done and get a small prize. And it's nothing fancy, but it's just to mark that, hey, you've done 10 projects. Great. So we've had over 4,000 people sign up as fiber artists, and it continues to grow. It's been a great success and a real game changer for our sheep producers, because people that were composting their wool 5 years ago are now making really good money on their wool, especially if they can get it washed, because washed fleece is much more marketable than raw, but some people sell raw. And we have also developed education materials for the fiber artists that maybe they've never purchased raw wool before. And we have instructions on how to wash it, what to do with it. And we have fiber profiles that explain each of the different types of wool, what to expect from it, and what projects they're good for. So we do a wide array of things, and I just love it. It's good work and benefits both the people and the animals. So can't get better than that.
I think too the nice part as a fiber person is that I don't know any fiber people whose arms would have to be twisted real hard to buy more fiber. And I like that I feel like this is a solid, really directive that I need to buy more yarn, which is really appreciated. I'm not sure my husband will think so, but whatever. And I think it's really cool to encourage too. I think there's such a vision that Conservancy ends up as like little zoos, basically, where when we're talking about, actually encouraging fiber production from these rare breeds, or we're actually encouraging meat production from these rare breeds, that not every animal born is going to be the quality that should be going into breeding stock to conserve a breed. And that if you create a demand, then there's more reason to conserve that breed than just, oh, this is interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they have to have a job.
When it comes to ownership of heritage breeds, you said you started out at a zoo that had a collection of heritage breeds or rare breeds. In the US specifically, what does the ownership look like in terms of who's owning and who's breeding heritage breeds? Are there pockets where there are more people? Are there people in research organizations who are doing breeding, or is it mostly private ownership and farmers?
It's mostly private ownership and farmers. And a lot of times with farm animals and zoos, a lot of zoos work it out with the farmer that they'll take offspring or they'll take animals back during the winter. It varies because zoos get kind of complicated as far as ownership goes, but vast majority are in private hands. There are a lot of living history museums that have rare breeds, like Mount Vernon, Colonial Williamsburg. They've got some wonderful collections of heritage breeds. Conner Prairie over near Indianapolis has a fabulous collection. There are public places. And if you're wondering where you can find some heritage breeds wool, you can go to our online breeders and products directory. And if you tick the box that says Shave 'em to Save 'em participants, all the producers will pop up on a map and you can see where everybody is and what they've got.
Sorry, I was trying to Google to see if I could find real fast who it is who has the Jacob sheep in my area. I hadn't even considered looking at your map to see. I thought somebody from our local yarn store would know, but so far, no luck. And I'm too Midwestern to just show up at their house if I don't have to.
Well, a lot of people have never been exposed to these.
So, is there a fun slogan encouraging people to eat animals that are under breed conservation? Because "Shave 'em to save 'em" is a great slogan, but
We haven't
it,
quite, we've had the eat 'em to save 'em, which we actually coined a long, long time ago. But we're still looking for something that's going to click for the food side of things. And I think we will find something, but it's a little harder for folks to get the food products, especially with some of the rarer breeds. So it's not going to be as easy a program to put together as Shave 'em to Save 'em. And because you can stick wool in the mail, but meat's going to be really hard and expensive. And so we haven't quite figured out how we're going to be more proactive in encouraging people to eat rare breed products. So there's just a bit more challenges with that. But you can also find those products in the breeders and products directory too. You can search out who's got meat maybe local to you, and you just buy off farm.
So, if someone is curious about heritage breeds but has a herd or flock of something that is more mainstream and is, thinking about diversifying or adding a few extra animals because farmers like to do that, is that directory a good place to look in terms of connecting with people who might have a type of cow or chicken or sheep that you would be interested in?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, and we also have online classifieds on the website as well.
What are some of the other programs that the Conservancy is doing? There's a Chicks in the Classroom program is on your website. Is that one of the yeah?
Yeah, that's one where, ag extension and 4-H, they help schools with the embryology unit that's required for I think grades 2 and 4 or something like that. And so they'll have an incubator and have the students take care of the incubator to hatch out chicks. And what happened here was the eggs they got would be from the university. And once they hatched the chicks out, all the chicks had to be destroyed because of intellectual property rights or something that required the chicks to be destroyed, which didn't really sit well with the teachers and certainly not the students. And so one of the extension agents came to me and asked if there's a way that we could do it with heritage breeds and then the farmer just gets the chicks back. And so we started doing that and it's worked out really, really well. And sometimes I can go back to the classroom to pick up the chicks myself, and I'll bring an adult to show them what the chicks look like that were hatched last year. And the kids really like that. But we've had other school systems that have been wanting to do the same thing. So we've got the whole teaching unit on video because during COVID, we couldn't do it. And so I ended up doing the hatching here at my house and videotaped everything. And the extension agents went over their part of the embryology. And so we've got the whole thing on video for folks that want to maybe try it out at their place. And again, they can go to our breeders and products directory to find people that are raising heritage breeds near them and see if you can find somebody that's willing to work with you.
Yeah, that's great. Is there a particular animal or a couple of animals at this point that are at that critical point that you would want to highlight in terms of animals that really need some champions to bring them back? Or are there any that are getting close to a critical point?
Yeah, one, if I wanted to put another 10 years into a chicken project, I'd probably take on the Catalana. They're a Mediterranean breed of primarily egg layers, although they're big enough that they're decent meat birds. But they're super rare, and we're having a heck of a time finding people that would get interested in them. And they're big and beautiful, and they've got these huge single combs and big wattles, and they're a beautiful buff color. And yeah, if there was one breed that I'd encourage people to try and work with, would be the Catalana, because their numbers are just dropping, and they're rare from where they come from, and they're a pretty easy breed to work with. That would be a good one.
if folks are interested in getting involved, especially with poultry, just because it's a smaller investment to be breeding animals, are there tips and tricks for things like if I wanted to breed some heritage birds to make myself useful and to justify my chicken math? What tactics do people use for making sure that the animals that are getting bred by the correct roosters?
Yeah, but really to make improvements in your chickens as far as their bodies go, it's all about the girls. That you can have the biggest, best rooster, but it doesn't mean you're going to make any improvements with size or conformation. The males are actually more important for color, but if you want great bodies, you got to concentrate on your girls. And we have several pieces on our website that talks about selecting chickens for productivity, and it gives you the points that you need to be looking for, such as heart girth and pelvic girth and straightness of the keel, size of the head, what to look for in the legs. And when you put all these things together, you can make some really good decisions on what animals to keep and what animals to let go. And with rare breeds, sometimes you got to start with what you got. And in the instance of the Crevcours, the birds I got originally, if they were 5 pounds, I'd be doing a backflip, but they're actually supposed to be 8 pounds. And so it's taken years to get them back to the breed standard weight. And I love going to poultry shows now and seeing big Crevcours out there. And at first, the judges didn't know what they were looking at. And they're like, oh, they're too big. It's like, no, they're standard weight. They're not too big. It's just all the birds you've ever seen are too small. And it's a great feeling to see those birds. But things can go south really quick with a breeding program. And if you're not paying attention, you could lose quality within a couple of generations. If you're breeding just anything, or you're breeding that favorite chicken that, was the runt of the clutch or what have you, and that's not doing you any favors. The other thing is, when people decide they want to get into breeding, you got to ask yourself, are you going to be eating those animals? Because you're going to be producing a lot of males and you only need so many. And if you think you're going to give them away as pets, that's a pipe dream. It ain't going to happen. If you're going to get into breeding, you need to deal with the reality that there's eating involved here. And for some people, maybe that's just not going to happen. And so I would say don't breed, just keep the birds, buy from a respectable breeder so that you're helping them with providing a market for their birds, and keep them as pets. But don't be breeding animals if you're not ready to face the consequences that you're going to have to eat some.
I know a few years ago, my flock provided some eggs to our local daycare for an egg in the classroom project with hatching, with running an incubator. And of the 6 chicks I got back, I got 4 very nice roosters, and 2 of them are now in my freezer because 4 roosters for 10 hens was not working. And everyone is much happier now. And thankfully, the kids, I think, have forgotten that they had named all these chickens. For the first year after they hatched, I sent a lot of updates, but the kids have moved on, and so have some of the roosters. I'm just trying to figure out now how I could chicks in the classroom some American cream draft horses. I'm not sure how I can swing that, but I'll work on it because that's my life.
I mean, some kind of a pitch that involves 4-H or FFA is usually a good way to do that kind of thing. Are there ways that the Conservancy is, using those youth programs to try and expand their programming?
There's a great youth program up at Maryland Sheep and Wool, and the kids have to write an essay on why they think they should get a particular breed and why they really feel they want to work with a particular breed. And then the winners get a lamb, and they are required to raise it and then bring it back the following year to show. That's been going on for a long time. And I think that's been a really great success story up there. We give memberships to the kids and hopefully help cultivate a new generation of rare breed lovers.
Get them while they're young, right?
Yeah. Sometimes we lose them to school, but hopefully they come back and stick with it.
What type of people get into heritage breeds? Like, I'm picturing kind of like your hippie farmers, but I don't assume that is all of who is doing it. Are there What kind of draws people into this conservation work and keeps them excited about it?
I like to say that people that work with rare breeds are independently minded people because they don't want to do what others are doing. We do have a lot that keep animals out of family tradition. We've got a member up in Connecticut that has the family's kept milking Devon cattle since they were brought over with the Pilgrims. They've had them for hundreds of years on the same property that was given to the family by the king before there was even a US. We have others that have like Piney Woods cattle in their family for hundreds of years. And so there is a lot of family tradition that keeps these breeds. And then there's hobby farmers. I think certainly people that don't want to make a business out of it per se, but want to do something different, then they'll raise rare breeds. And then there, if you have access to a good market like New York or DC or Philly, you might be able to find a market for selling meat and eggs and ask a bit more for it because the cost of production is going to be more in some instances because you're paying more for breeding stock and they take a little longer to grow out. Like heritage turkeys, for instance, you've got to charge at least $70 a bird if you're going to make a little profit. Because rather than the 18 weeks a commercial bird grows out, it's 28 weeks for turkeys. And so you're feeding them a lot longer and it costs you a lot more to produce them. But my goodness, the flavor on them is outstanding.
It's interesting because I feel like it's one of those situations where you want to promote the animal that you're growing and show it to people, but then certain consumers are of the mindset where it's like, oh, that one's really cute. I don't know that I want to eat it, right? But that's what we're saying is the essential part of the production system is if we're going to keep animals around, then we need to eat some of them.
Oh, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're farm animals. They have purpose. And if that purpose is being a lawn ornament, that's not a realistic vision for the long-term stability of that breed.
Yeah, that's right. Are there projects coming up either for you personally or for the conservancy that you're excited about, things into the future?
Oh, there's always projects. We just got funding to do a regional strengthening the fiber community within the Great Lakes region. And we'll be working with the Wisconsin Wool Cooperative to come up with some educational programming for both producers and fiber artists to kind of shore up the regional system and get everybody talking with each other because there are gaps in which maybe one doesn't know about the other. And so we're going to be trying to work on that. And right now, we're collecting cell samples from rare breed pigs. We're a little bit worried about African swine fever coming into the United States. And we were able to get funding to collect cells from all the American breeds of pig for long term cell line storage up at USDA. That's in case swine fever does get in here. At least we've got a backup and that's frozen and we can hopefully clone or manipulate the cells to be semen or eggs and be able to produce pigs in the future. But that's well underway and we've got a few more, well, one or two more breeds that we have to finish collecting, but we're getting close to it. The other project that's kind of my pet project because I just adore them is Poitou donkeys. And we've spent the better part of the last 5 years working on stabilizing the Poitou population here in the US. And I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're the huge, shaggy donkeys from France. They're like donkeys with dreadlocks, and they're incredible animals. And right now in the US, we probably have about 120, 130. We did a census. We started a stud book. Because of my connections in France, we were able to get the French Association's blessing to start a stud book here. And we're hoping to have in a couple of years a French team come over. A few of us have been working with them on training inspectors here in the US. So that's something we don't really have right now. And we want to conform to the French standard. We've been working on that for the past 3 years. And the population, I think, is finally on a stronger footing. There are a few more people that are starting to take on breeding herds. And they're not a beginner's donkey because they can be really delicate as foals. But we've been fortunate enough to work with a veterinarian down in Texas who's near one of the biggest herds in the world, frankly. And he's come up with a protocol that has improved foal survivability from 50% up to 90%, 80%. So a lot more foals are surviving now. And we're pretty excited about that.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm assuming that just about all of the livestock that's in North America was brought here from somewhere else. How does it look on an international level? You've already talked about it a little bit, both with chickens and donkeys in terms of cooperating with other countries. But what are other countries and what are we doing internationally to protect heritage breeds? And they would have also changed once they cross the ocean, then things change over time too in terms of what those breeds turn into in the countries where they ended up.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. A lot of the livestock came over with the Europeans, except for turkeys, because turkeys were domesticated by Native Americans. And so they were already a domestic animal here in the US. International numbers figure very strongly with our programs because if a breed is doing okay in its native country and the US population's not pertinent to it, then we're not going to list a breed just because it's rare in the US. It's got to be pertinent to the international numbers. For instance, Arapawa goats, they're from New Zealand. And right now, 50% of the world's population of Arapawas are in the United States. And the population in New Zealand is no longer secure because the government treats them as not feral, invasive species. And so their population is actually at risk in New Zealand. And these are the last remnants of what we believe were English milch goats, which are now extinct in England. But they're doing great here in the United States. And breeds like the milking Devon, that's the original type of Devon cow that came over from the UK. A bunch of stubborn New Englanders didn't want to fix what wasn't broke, and so they left the Devon as it had always been, whereas in the UK, the milking Devon in its original form is gone. It's extinct, and it only exists in the United States now. And over in the UK, they have beef Devons, and they've selected heavily for beef qualities, and so they've lost that milk production. And we do try to have a collaborative relationship with our partners. We're certainly close with Rare Breed Survival Trust in the UK. Matter of fact, the person that founded that, his daughter was actually our very first executive director when we started in 1977. And we've had a close relationship with them. We do have a International Heritage Breeds Week every May. And it's we celebrate our anniversary of when we got started in May, but we decided it should be a celebration of all rare breed organizations. And so Rare Breed Survival Trust and the rare breeds organizations in Australia, New Zealand, Germany, and other countries, they all participate as well. And we swap stories on what's happening with our breeds, and it's good fun. But international cooperation is pivotal. And one of the requirements we have when a breed is getting listed is, will there be reciprocity with the country of origin? Because if the US population's a dead end, it doesn't serve conservation by expending resources on a breed that's going to be a genetic dead end here in the US.
Makes a lot of sense. Tell us about your book. You're an author too, right?
Yeah, a couple of books. Co-author on Introduction to Heritage Breeds and then managing breeds for a secure future. Introduction to heritage breeds is a great one if you're rare breed curious and you want to see what it's all about and what it takes to work with rare breeds. It's a fun read, an easy read. And then managing breeds for a secure future is a real deep dive into conservation breeding and also managing breed associations. Successful breed associations are really crucial for a breed because breed associations that are running and functional, their breeds tend to do much better. Another initiative that we took on a few years ago was cultivating leadership. And this is a series of webinars that focuses in on training for breed associations, like how to create bylaws, how to manage elections, how to cultivate a good board, how a board should function, managing finances and transparency. And it's a great series for anybody that's involved with the breed association. And I don't think there's anything out there that's remotely like that series, because the times have changed. And it used to be before, when you're creating a club or an association, you cut and paste bylaws and you're done. But it's a whole different ballgame, especially with social media and having to deal with the complexity of that. And so we really took our time to be thoughtful about covering the subjects that are really pertinent to a good functioning breed association. It's probably one of the more important things that we put together in recent years because it has real impact for breed associations.
And then can you act as a support for breed associations as well, as in terms of getting it set up?
Yeah, we do a lot of hand holding. You remember I said earlier, people with rare breeds are independently minded people, and independently minded people tend to have difficulties getting along with each other. And so sometimes I feel like a marriage counselor more than a conservationist, but every week it's something. But we're pretty good at smoothing things out. And if there is a meltdown and a breakup, our goal is to keep working at it, and eventually they'll get back together. If some of the faces change, but we're there as their support. We'll also run elections for breed associations so it can be conducted by a neutral party. So we do a lot of support for breed associations. And I also wanted to mention our microgrants program. We have a program that offers up to $2,000 for rare breed projects. And we have a number of categories. There's a national grant, and then we have youth grants. And then we also have breed association grants. So say a breed association's getting started, they need a computer to start making their newsletter, or they need a software program so they can manage their registry, or maybe they want to digitize their registry. The money can be used for that. But the grants open up in May, usually around May 15th, and then close on August 15th. And winners are usually decided by November. And there's been some really wonderful projects that have gotten funded. And even the most simple thing can be a big deal for people, like automatic waterers that are frost free, that they're worth their weight in gold. Coming from New England, oh my God, that was like a huge game changer. Or getting electricity in a barn, or getting better electronet fencing so your sheep aren't getting killed constantly. Stuff like that, we typically fund. And for breed associations, I love giving those grants out because they've done some amazing things with what little money we do give them. And I've been getting all my reports in these past few weeks from winners from last year. And it's great to see that all the success. And we have a Watusi cattle breeder actually here in North Carolina, an old timer, never written a grant in his life. But he's one of the few people that are raising these animals and has been for a long time. And he wanted to improve his pastures so that he could improve nutrition and be able to put some more animals on the ground, being more cost effective in the process. And I was out at his place a couple of weeks ago, and it was like night and day. The pastures are so much more improved, and the weeds are gone. And he put a ton of work into it, but it's made a quantifiable difference for him. It was amazing to see bales of hay left uneaten because they're too busy eating the grass, whereas before on the same pasture, they were at that hay and not browsing much in the pasture. And he doesn't have to put out protein tubs like he used to. When he put them out before, they were scoffing it up big time. And now they're being licked maybe once in a blue moon, but they don't need it because they're getting the nutrition they need from the improved pastures. So I love seeing that.
I think it's a good reminder too for folks that a lot of these rare breeds and rare breed groups are in unexpected places. There's apparently a yak conservancy not far from me in Wisconsin, which is not something I would have guessed, and they're just kind of little pockets of interesting things out there in the world. So I know that you said your daughter is out being a human, which presumably means that she's more than 9 or 10 years old. Maybe she's just very independent.
Yeah, my baby just turned 30.
Okay. So we ask guests to reflect on when they first became parents. And for a lot of our guests, that's a more recent situation. But what comes to mind for you when you think about that transition into being a parent as well as being a person in your own right? And what was that time like for you?
It was stunning that I had a child because I'm not a baby person. Children sometimes frighten me because I have a hard time getting down to their level. And I get frustrated when I'm trying to explain something and I can't find the right words sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it's easier now that I've had a child and, it's not the end of me. But I think it is life altering, and it has been one of the best things that I ever did. Thankfully, I have a wonderful husband who takes parenting very seriously, as do I. And we really wanted to raise a good person. And she's got a kind heart, and people can't help but fall in love with her because she's just warm and open. And she was recruited by her high school to be a peer mediator because she could talk to everybody and she can de-escalate things and in a way that is a really rare quality. And I like to think that maybe she got that from my husband and I, because we've been married 32 years. We've never had an argument. Never. Yeah, we've had disagreements, but not to the point where you're arguing, because it's just life's too short to do that. And neither of us like to argue. Although, being French, he loves to argue politics, but that's a whole different thing. But my daughter's the same way. I don't think she appreciates arguing, and I wish there'd be more people like that out there. And so it's been a very moving thing in our lives, and we actually really like each other, which is phenomenal. And we've got the open policy that nothing's off limits if you need to talk to us. And it's been great. And I really look forward to vacation next year because my mother-in-law is turning 100 in March. And so we're all going to France to celebrate that. And whenever the three of us get together, it's a giggle fest the entire time. It's just great. It can be raining and miserable and cold outside, and we just have the best time ever. I feel really fortunate that we had her and continue to share in her life. And yeah, I really wish more people had the same positive experience we've had. I know it gets rare these days sometimes, and that really makes me sad. We did our best. I think we did okay. She can still drive me crazy sometimes, but she's a good person, and that's all I could hope for.
I love the way that you talk about her. It's clear that you have a great relationship, and I think the goal for all of us with younger kids is the hope that we will raise people that we can enjoy spending time with and be friends with as we get older. So that sounds beautiful.
Yeah, I think having a partner that you can play tag, sometimes tag, you're the parent, because there are definitely times where she knew exactly how to get under my skin. And my husband would be like, why don't you go take a bath? So I'll go. And it's so funny. She drove me crazy when she was about 10. It was a period that was awful for me. And dad was like the best thing since sliced bread for her back then. And then the tides turned when she turned 16, and all of a sudden she was driving him crazy. And I'm like, dear, why don't you go take a bath? But she couldn't walk all over us. We both come with a firm understanding that you respect your parents, and that's it. And we were never in a position where we couldn't take her anywhere. The screaming kids, the supermarket, and things like that. Nah. She did that once and was brought straight home and put to bed, and she never put up a fuss with shopping after that. Worked like a charm.
So, what was your favorite thing when you were raising her about having a connection to animals and to agriculture? Do you feel like that contributed to her upbringing?
Oh yeah, her first word was doggy. It wasn't mama or dad. It was doggy, and so we both share a love of animals. She is not into farm work, that's for sure. She loved her chickens. We had 3 chickens we promised we were not going to eat, and those were her pets, and she loved them. But cleaning the chicken coop was not her thing. And her home is filled with pets, and she gardens. And I think the animal agriculture, she wasn't so keen on, but the crop culture, I think she got from my husband. He's the gardener and he has a big vegetable garden. And my daughter's starting to do the same thing. So it's kind of cool when he's given her advice on where to plant and what varieties to get. And so that's been really cool to see. And now she's announced she's going to try her hand at keeping bees, which Fred did for many years. And like, good luck with that, because I know nothing about it other than it's complicated and time consuming. And knowing what I know about her love of animal work, I'm not sure it's going to work out for her, but she wants to try. So we'll see.
So, how can we encourage kids and I guess people generally to be more interested in the science and the history behind breed conservation? Because it feels like if people are even aware that that conservation of livestock happens, that it's sort of a thing people do because they have too much free time. And I think both the history behind these breeds and the science of the conservation and the science of breed improvement and that sort of thing is fascinating, but it's not something we promote as much as we could, I think, on how to interest people in that biology and the sciencey parts.
Well, some of it, I think we can interest them by telling the stories. I'm involved with a project right now that is just simply fascinating, and we're trying to get some kids involved with it as well. But it's around Choctaw hogs, and we are working with the Choctaw Nation on this project where there are archaeological sites throughout the Southeast where they've found pig bones at these Native American sites. And because we had some good connections within that archaeology community within the nation, we were able to get permission to get samples from each of those archaeological sites. And University of Oklahoma was able to pull the ancient DNA from the bones. And now we're going to be comparing them to the modern day Choctaw hogs that exist today in Oklahoma to see if they're the same hogs that were kept back before the Trail of Tears. And pigs are a forgotten aspect of Choctaw life that was really super important as a food resource. But a lot of people have forgotten that, and that the pigs were not only a source of food but a source of revenue. And the national dish of the Choctaw Nation has pork in it. But we take this story, and the cultural center there does all kinds of programs with the kids to talk about the animals. And now they have their own herd of Choctaw hogs. And up until a couple years ago, they didn't own any. And now they've got a big herd out there. And during the festivals, they'll serve pork. And I think that's a great way to reach out to the kids and get them excited about the science that's going on with this, but also the culture and history. And a lot of these breeds have really fascinating stories. My Crevecoeur chickens, I learned a few years ago that the first untethered balloon ride with living beings on it included a Crevecoeur. The Montgolfier brothers, they had a Crevecoeur on that balloon and it survived. And I'm super close to proving that Crevecoeurs went down with the Titanic. I'm almost there. I'm missing one piece to prove it, but
I didn't see that in the movie, but I believe you.
yeah, well, people heard them crowing as the ship was going down. And all the descriptions point to them being Crevecoeurs. But that's a story for another day. But it's stuff like that grabs people. You're like, what? and there's plenty of stories like that out there. So I think that's what grabs people when you start making those cultural connections. And yeah, some of them are really cool. Poitou donkeys are about as cool as you can get with the donkey. From a historical standpoint, they were the producers of the finest working mules in all of Europe. And they were super important for a long time. And people don't know that because who uses mules anymore? And or the Crevecoeur was the top table bird in France for centuries. Nobody's heard of them these days, but that's still really important. So I find that when I start relaying these stories that it can really grab people, whether it's a chicken or a cow or a sheep or what have you. Each one's different, but
Have you considered a children's book series?
I have. I'm actually working on one involving my dog who comes on a lot of farm visits with me, and she's been everywhere, Texas and even in Manhattan and Hudson Valley, Oklahoma. My dog, I love traveling with her, and I've been thinking about a children's book involving her and our adventures at the different farms. I just need to stop dragging my heels and just write it. Yeah, and it's not that I lack stories because she's been on dozens of visits with me, so we can talk about a different breed in each of the books, and it'd be fun.
Jeanette, I was thinking too from the scientific satisfaction. If you're breeding Angus cattle, nothing you do is going to, it's incredibly unlikely that anything that you do in your herd is going to vastly improve the breed or vastly really just rock the breed world. Where if you're working on a breed where, like with your chickens that you can get from a 5-pound bird to an 8-pound bird, that's a huge thing. And it's much, much more likely for you to be able to do, or even with cattle that you could make a huge contribution a lot more easily.
I think you can. There is an opportunity to make a big difference.
All right, so we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
Chicken confirmation. I would dominate. I know how to breed a good chicken. It's little known, maybe not little known, but I am the worst chicken snob there is, and I'll tear apart a bird any day of the week. But I like to see good breeding, and when I see a really fine looking chicken, it in my yard, it makes me really proud.
Yes. Might as well. If you're going to have livestock, you might as well have nice looking ones, right?
Yeah.
Well, now I feel bad. Jeanette, a lot of my chickens have come from a local Amish farm that gets rid of their birds at quite a young age, just to keep production numbers up, which is understandable. But one of my favorite birds has terrible crossbeak and seems to have been molting fairly continually for a few years now. And she's the ugliest little thing, but she lays beautiful eggs, and she seems to have more brain cells than all the rest of my birds put together, which isn't saying that much, I guess, but it's something, you know? And it's just, she's so ugly. She's really a face only a mother could love.
So we will go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. If you're a listener and have something to cuss or discuss this week, you can submit yours with our SpeakPipe or our email. Katie, what do you have to cuss or discuss this week?
I'm having one of those times of trying to balance folks having tough times in their lives and empathizing with the fact that they are struggling with X, Y, and Z, and empathizing with their big feelings and their struggle and how hard this is for them, versus when you don't necessarily agree with the decisions that are giving them these big feelings. Remembering to separate the two and trying to keep it less noticeable that you have not added any commentary on your thoughts on how they've ended up in this situation, or just the remembering that you can empathize with the fact that they're struggling without agreeing with what they're struggling with. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I feel like there's a bigger story there, but I don't think we're going to get it today. But that's okay. Not a public share.
No, it's not. Yeah, there is, and it's not. Jeanette, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
That my husband's on call this week. And every time he's on call, it makes me realize I have a hard time being productive when he's not home. And I have to admit, he's a driving force to me being productive. And don't get me wrong, he's not a slave driver, but gosh, he motivates me. And every time he's on call, it becomes clearly evident that I don't have much motivation when he's not around.
I get that. There is something about having another set of eyes watching, or even just being there, right?
It is harder to enjoy your nap when someone keeps walking through, looking at you, for example. Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
Well, that just brought up, I wasn't even sure what I was going to do today, but that brought up something for me. On the accountability theme, I really enjoy my Pilates class, and I go once a week, and I'm very dedicated, and I rarely miss it. But at the same time, I guess I understand the motivation, but there's something about the fact that when there's no one else that I have to be accountable to, that exercise is so much harder to fit into my schedule. But yeah, I don't know that I have the time or the finances to sign up for classes every day of the week. But at the same time, there is something about the fact that it's written down, I've paid for it, there's a teacher there who will notice if I'm not in attendance, that gets me in the door. But I should learn to be a little bit more accountable to myself and even just go for a walk. But the dog does help with that, I suppose. So we want to thank you so much, Jeanette, for joining us today. If people want to find out more about the work that the Conservancy is doing, where should they be looking online?
Livestockconservancy.org. And we have a Facebook page, Instagram.
All the places. That is great. And we can all go when we listen to this episode and look up all the cool livestock that we didn't know we wanted to have in our on our farm. So thank you so much for this conversation today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.